All right, good morning. We're glad you're here in person and online, and at least up in Milford, it was snowing like crazy when we left the house this morning. I don't know how it is outside, so hopefully you enjoyed the beauty that God has created this morning. A few announcements as we get started. The kids that are in the Christmas Eve service play will have practice today directly after service. As I look around the room, none of those kids are in this room. But this is pertinent to you because you have to get out of their way after services. They're asking that we try to clear the auditorium reasonably quickly so they can get into their play practice and not spoil the surprise that we will have on Saturday. Which brings us to, please remember we have our Christmas Eve service at 3 o'clock this coming Saturday, Christmas Eve. Yes, it's normally been at 4 o'clock in the past, but because it was a Saturday, we felt like maybe we could back it up an hour and give people more time to get onto their Christmas Eve plans. So that is at 3 o'clock, and the kids will be performing their play in the beginning of that, and then we will continue with our service from there. And then just remember that next week being Christmas Day and the following week being New Year's Day, there will not be a Bible class hour. We will not be meeting that time, but there will be worship at 10 o'clock as normal on both of those days. So kind of exciting to be talking about Christmas, I hope, right? Yeah. All right. So what is your purpose in life? Small, little, simple question, right? What is your purpose in life? Anybody want to speak up? I know we just started. When you think of what is your purpose in life, what kind of thoughts come to mind?
Whatever God wants me to do.
Whatever God wants me to do. Thank you. Appreciate that. Any other thoughts on what is my purpose in life? Well, yes, Dick.
The very first generic we could say is to seek and save the lost.
Okay. Okay.
Sometimes we don't seek very hard. And so my purpose, as I've gotten older, my purpose is to try to be an example for Christ. Have the attitude, Philippians 2:5, the attitude of myself, that of Christ Jesus. I try to live that way, and I want to be, Ken and I were mentioning this, we were mentioning this, the idea of being polite to somebody, helpful to somebody, whatever you can be. You know, I want to be an example. So when I passed, people said he was a good guy. He helped people. He cared. He loved the Lord. You know, when I think about where you're going to be left, my purpose is to help others get to Christ. But there's a whole lot of other things in between.
There's a whole lot of it, yeah, exactly. And it has some idea of what we're known for in the long run. Could be what's written on our tombstone, but what we're known for in the long run. Yes.
Well, unless you believe in suicide, then you have to stay alive.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Well, to help jog your thoughts and maybe expand some horizons on this, this is what's my purpose from age 0 to 100. So we'll go into this. Maybe.
Do you feel like life has a purpose?
I do.
I think so. I'm here to make people happy and smile.
Educate and entertain.
To marry my woman.
Being a mother to my 2 children.
Different times in your life, you have different purposes.
Spiritually, emotionally.
Personal, professional.
I think I'm still trying to figure that out, my purpose.
My challenge sometimes can be figuring out which one I want to care about most today.
I'm only 14, so I don't really know what my purpose is at the moment.
Still looking now.
I think most people equate their purpose to monetary ambitions.
There's something deeper than, what kind of car you drive and how nice you look.
I love to inspire, motivate, and encourage people.
Whenever I can, to be a mentor.
Being available to help someone in their journey.
Because I feel like there are a lot of people in this world that are lost and don't have anyone there for them.
The purpose of your life is sort of defined by your actions and by the manner in which you've lived?
I'm here to help inspire other people to live life to their fullest.
Like, I meant to be nice with everyone.
Open a world to empathy.
At this point in my life, I'm feeling like, who knows?
And as I'm getting older, I'm definitely trying to figure out more and more.
Because there are many people whose career and how they make a living, where their passion is and what they're good at is actually their job.
I feel like I have a purpose in life because I just want to keep on moving forward.
Always learning, growing.
I think it's just that journey and the curiosity about life.
Do what you're passionate about. Don't just get caught up in that sort of, hamster wheel of getting by.
I really love animals, writing, just storytelling.
To share my gifts and talents with other people.
Figure out how I can live to be at least 110.
Making people laugh and having fun.
I believe my purpose is to have children, and I'm very excited for that.
The purpose of life is to experience it. Enjoy opportunities, and also recognize that there's going to be hills and valleys.
Take advantage of being alive.
Exchange as much love as you can while you're here.
To live the best life you can with as most enthusiasm as you can so that other people will benefit by your having lived.
So pancake, subscribe. We got a song coming in there. Purpose. This is a very large thought of I think it encompasses a lot. You heard in that video the idea of maybe your purpose is wrapped up in talents and gifts, and we're gonna talk about that a little bit as we get towards the back half of this. You heard the one young woman talk about, I want to have children. That's my purpose. And you could have different thoughts about that, but is that not a noble idea of what my purpose in life is, kind of thought? You heard people of all different ages in that going, well, I'm not sure. I'm still trying to figure that out a little bit. And maybe there's some truth in that for you as we go into this. So, as we've gone through these lessons, these all came out of our teen retreat, as Christian's probably said that already, talking about core matters. And I think this pursuit, lifelong pursuit of what's my purpose, is ever evolving, ever growing. And I wonder if the further we walk through the journey of faith, the journey of life, the experiences of life, that if that either grows bigger, maybe truly what would my purpose be might change as we experience different things in life. But I guess I'm wondering is that it's probably not something you got it figured out once and then it stays static the rest of whatever, Some of the comments this morning are the idea of being called to spreading the gospel and that call of being sent out to seek and save the lost. We've talked about the idea of loving and sharing with one another, just continuing to have that passion for life and whatever that passion for life brings about in us, and not letting us get into places of stagnation or darkness. And so this morning we're going to try to expand that horizon a little bit and give you kind of a core principle of it, and then we're going to get kind of further into even more of maybe how we can define ourselves going forward, regardless of what context we put that in. So I want to start this morning with Jacob. We're going to spend a little bit of time on Jacob, and then we're going to get into Joseph. And actually, when you talk about we're going to do Jacob and Joseph, that's a whole lot of chapters in the Bible in Genesis, all right? And we're going to end up in Genesis 32. It'll take me a little bit to get there, but we'll try to get through this without me going too far into the story. But it's not we can get into the birth story of Jacob and Esau. I'm not going to leave that for you. Maybe some homework today would be because what we're doing is we're comparing and contrasting the way Jacob went about life and the way Joseph went about life. And I would dare say what I'm trying to leave for you is let's have a whole lot more Joseph in our life than let's have Jacob in our life. Okay? But if you know anything about the story of Jacob and Esau, there was almost enmity between these two twin brothers from the very beginning. And as they grow up, they get to be young adults, whatever that means. I don't know exactly what age this was, but if you can depict that, there's a bowl of stew there, and Esau's the very big, hairy, red one, right? Because Esau means red. And Jacob is the scrawny little conniver. That's maybe a little judgmental, okay? And there's this scene that, Esau's been out hunting, and he's famished, and Jacob's been waiting for this moment to come. Or at least it seems that way. And he's like, can we have some light, Bruce? We're going to get into Romans 12, and we're going to need it here in a little bit. So anyways, so there's this scene that Esau comes in, and he's famished, and he's wanting to eat. And almost here you can see Jacob just kind of tempting him with this bowl of stew. It's smelling so good. And, it's kind of like, here, have some. And then you can almost see him pull it back a little bit. Wait a minute. But if you'll give me your birthright, then I'll give you this bowl of stew. What is Jacob's purpose in life? That's what Jacob's trying to figure out. And he's clearly stuck on this idea that he wasn't the first one out of the womb. And if you talk to triplets or twins, we know some triplets in our lives, who was the first one out? Who's the oldest? Who was born first? Because we're talking literally, it can be a matter of just seconds before the other baby comes out and is born. And Jacob really seems to be caught up in what is my purpose in life? And he's not settling for the one that he would naturally be given. He's wanting the one that Esau innately is going to get. And that's going to be the idea of who carries the family name, who carries the family clan. Is this family of any clout? Right now, they're not. Right? Is this family going to be of any clout? Yes, right? And do they have any inkling that they're going to be a family of clout? What was the promise to Abraham? Anybody? The Bible knowledge. What was the promise to Abraham?
Through your descendants, all nations will be blessed.
Yes. And how many descendants would he have? An analogy of the stars of the sky and the sand, right, on the seashore. That might sound like a family of clout. Now, they don't know it yet. They haven't experienced that yet. But do you think they handed down the stories in the family? Do you think that Isaac knew of, well, Isaac would absolutely know of a moment that his dad almost offered him on a sacrifice, right? Okay. But do you think that Abraham told Isaac about the promise that God gave Abraham when he said, if you leave this place and you follow me, I'll make you the father of nations? Of course they handed that down. That's their family lineage. That's their thought. And so then does Isaac tell Jacob and Esau, this is this is God's promise to us? Do you think there's some what there? What of purpose of life that Jacob goes, ooh, I want to be head of that. I want that. I want to be in that role. I want to be that guy. And so he sets up this scene. I just can get the birthright. And Esau gives in. I don't have a picture for this, but it's not it's several years later, and Isaac's about to pass away. They're convinced of that. He's blind. And it's time for Isaac to give the blessing. And the blessing goes to Esau, right? And this time, Jacob and his mama are in on this one, going, we're gonna get the blessing. Because the blessing is incredible of what's gonna come, what's going to happen in this family. And he's got his mindset on what is my purpose, and he knows what he's going after, and he's trying to get that. And so somehow he puts on goat's hair and all this stuff and dresses himself up so that he can go into blind. He even makes him smell bad, because evidently Esau smelled bad, okay, you know. And he does this whole thing so that blind Isaac doesn't get it, who's really before him, and he steals the blessing. You guys know that story, right? Okay. He's really chasing this purpose in life that he has set out for himself. Sometimes chasing purpose, chasing the wrong goals, the wrong thoughts, the wrong ways. Now, this is holistic. I doubt any of us are. I know many of you well. I know some of you pretty well. I don't know that any of you are as conniving as Jacob. All right, I give you more credit than that. But don't we sometimes chase the wrong goals, the wrong thoughts? We're going after things that we don't really need. We're going after a purpose that isn't going to help our life get anywhere. And it's hard to stay focused on that. And sometimes it's even hard to really understand. You know, sometimes it takes hindsight to go, yeah, I thought that was where God was leading me, but then I got halfway down that road and went, no, this was Barry. This wasn't God. Or sometimes we get halfway down that road and go, you know, that felt like really in the beginning, I thought that was from God, but by the time I could see it clearly, I feel like Satan was more behind that than God was. And so there's this struggle that we go through, and you know, we can be really hard on Jacob, but you know, maybe he's just human. And he's just that struggle, and he's caught up in that. But he's really chasing this purpose in life, and he's going about it with, you know, dishonesty. That's probably a clue you're going in the wrong direction, right? If you got to go about it with the wrong motives, the wrong gain, right? That's a simple lesson. But, you know, it doesn't stop with just the moment with Esau. And it doesn't just stop the moment that he walks out of there with Isaac's blessing. If you're in Genesis 32, it says this, that night Jacob, let's see if we can go there. That night Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 maidservants, and his 11 sons, and crossed the ford at Jabbok. And after he'd sent them across the stream, he sent all his possessions. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. The man said, let me go, for it is daybreak. But Jacob replied, I will not let you go unless you bless me. The man asked him, what's your name? Jacob, he answered. Then the man said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men and have overcome. And then he goes on and wants to know who he is. We have this moment that most people come to this saying, Jacob wrestles with God. In fact, the NIV highlights that section saying, Jacob wrestles with God. And even, you know, he wrestled the birthright away from Esau. He wrestled the blessing away from Esau again with his father Isaac. And now he's with God himself for whatever reason on this night, and he's wrestling with God. Have you ever wrestled with God all night long? You don't go to sleep. Your brain's turned on. You're stressed about whatever it is. You're trying to pray. And then your brain gets stressed again. And it's not a physical wrestling with God, but it's a spiritual wrestling with God. And sometimes I'll say that's the journey to really understanding purpose. I don't believe this is a negative thing or a bad thing. This is maybe one of those things when we get to heaven, it's like, maybe we get to see the replay of what this looked like, okay? Jacob wrestling with God. But even there, he's like, I'm not stopping wrestling till you bless me. What was he seeking all along? The blessing was his purpose. And now he's even wrestling with God over it, not just man. All right? And he's blessed. What did his name become? Israel. We still know of Israel to this day. There's a land called Israel. There's a people called Israel. The blessing, he got it. And he didn't go about it necessarily in all the ways that maybe we would condone. But he got it, right? And that's up for God to kind of work out how all of that came together. But I have to stand back and I have to go, you know what? I don't really want to be like Jacob. Maybe some of you do. I don't know. Okay? Do we really want to go about finding my purpose in life the way Jacob did? He got it. He becomes the father of the nation. But do we want that to be our story? And it's like, where did Jacob miss it? And let me just food for thought. If God was going to give it to him anyways, why would he have to go through all of that? Did he change God's plan? I don't think so. Now, there's no book, chapter, verse on this. I can't prove this to you, okay? But did he really change God's plan? Oh, it was going to be Esau, now it's Jacob. Why go about life the hard way? And if we had more time, we could go more into Jacob and Esau and how hard it was between Jacob and Esau after all of this. But it's like, what did Jacob miss in the walk that God was actually laying out before him? Because I want to find God's purpose for my life, and I would rather not go about it the hard way. Right? Okay? Yes?
I think what he missed, just jump in real quick. Yes. I'm not going to do this on my own. The blessing has to come from God, not from my brother, not from my dad. It has to come from God.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was much more self-driven at that point in time. Okay.
Realizing until we got done wrestling, but
and life is going to have dark times. Life is going to have times we are wrestling through what next? How do I deal with this? How do I move forward through whatever? Life's going to have those times for us all, and trying to get at that. So really, I think the big difference is instead of chasing what's my purpose, I think there's a different look we can take on this. Some of you may have seen this video, but this changes the perspective that we're going to go from Jacob to what we're going to see in Joseph. So let's see if we can get this to go.
How do I know? A lot of people, when they think of the phrase, how do I know, they always want to put the what behind it. How do I know what I'm supposed to do? The question that you really should ask is, how do I know why I'm here? Because when you know your why, your what becomes more clear and more impactful. If you know, like for instance, people know that I do comedy, but that's what I do. My why is to inspire people to walk in purpose. So I can do comedy, I can write books, I can be in a movie, because all of it is motivated by my why. In fact, I have a new web series out called Michael Jr. Break Time. We probably just did the 6th episode. It's on YouTube. So every single Wednesday at 3 o'clock, we drop a new episode on YouTube of Michael Jr. Break Time. What it is it's me. I travel around the country and I do stand-up comedy, in case you didn't know. And in the middle of my comedy set sometime, I'll stop and just talk to my audience. And we've been filming this, and it's, you know, it's pretty cool. So we're in Winston-Salem. I'm gonna show you a clip from Winston-Salem. And I'm just talking to this guy in the audience, and he tells me that he's a musical instructor at a school. So I was like, all right, you're a musical instructor, you know, can you sing? Let me hear you sing a song. So this is what happened at the last episode of Michael Jr.'s Break Time. Check it. So you're a musical director.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Wow. That bro could sing. You know what I'm saying? All right. Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick, if you know which version I'm talking about. Just see if that exists. Let me see what you got.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I see.
Okay. Here's what I want you to catch. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what becomes more impactful because you're walking towards or in your purpose.
Maybe. There it went. So we transitioned to Joseph. Did Joseph, in some sort of different way, know his why over what his path was going to do? And as I stand here, I have to say, on some level, yes. Because of the choices that he makes. And I'm going to try to go through Joseph quickly here. But, he starts out with being daddy's favorite son. Why was he daddy's favorite son? Well, it goes back to that trick that Laban played on Jacob. And he was going to get to marry Rachel, work 7 years for Rachel, somehow, not fluorescent lighting, marries Leah, right? Wakes up the next morning, and there's Leah, and he works another 7 years for Rachel. And why is Joseph his favorite? Because Rachel finally gives him a son. He's Rachel's, not Leah's. And he's his favorite. So you end up, I'm sure, with a coat of many colors, just like that on screen, all right? He gives him this coat. Oh, but before there was even a coat, or in the midst of all of this coat stuff, there was these dreams that Joseph had, that everybody's bowing down to him. His brothers are bowing down to him. His fathers are bowing down to him. And Joseph just doesn't keep that to himself. I mean, think about this. Listen, think about this in the Gillespie clan. If one of the siblings had the dream, everybody's bowing down to me, do you think one of the Gillespie would need to share that with the rest of the family? Okay. They're bowing down to me, right? God's given him this dream. He's just got to go share it. I don't know, Well, there's some enmity, there's some strife, there's some anger there. And you know the story. The brothers, he's going out to meet them in the field. He's going to bring them food. He's going to check on them. He's supposed to then deliver where they're at, what's going on, back to his father. And the brothers see him coming, and they're like, now's our chance. Let's get rid of him. Right? and there's this dramatic thing about killing him or not killing him and throwing him into a well, and one of the brothers trying to go and save him. If you really want to know your Bible trivia, who went to go save him? I'm leaving this for dramatic effect. Maybe you'll go read the story. Who went to go save him? Maybe you know that already, okay. Oh, by the way, by the time he gets there to save him, they've already plucked him out and sold him to the Ishmaelites that are going to Egypt. And he gets sold. And if you're really stuck in what is my purpose, the day you get sold to the Ishmaelites as a slave, are you going, what's my purpose? You think that he was planning for that one? But if you're caught up in the why of your purpose, you could have a really bad day, like being sold as a slave to the Ishmaelites. That's a really bad day, all right? Or whatever your bad day counts for you in that, or bad season of life. But there's something in Joseph that I think he knows his why from the beginning, that something in it, and it may have been those dreams, that God's going to do this for me and through me, and I don't get it. And maybe he was a little arrogant in sharing it, but he's got some sense of larger purpose of why. He finds himself off in Egypt. He ends up in Potiphar's household, and that goes really well for him, right? This remote's not really working. Can we go to the next slide? There we go. And you end up in this scene. Potiphar's wife trapped him. And I think at this point we really start to see Joseph's getting why. What has God called him to? And he's getting that this has to be about God. This has to be about God's ways and not about man's ways. And I got to say, I don't know that he got that insight from his father. But somehow he got that insight that when life goes down, what would God call me to in this morning? That's a what, but that keeps us focused on why when all of this is going on. Of course, that works out for him so poorly that Potiphar throws him into prison, and we're still not moving on. So can you guys move me to the next slide? I'm giving up on that remote. So, and he ends up in jail, ends up in prison. And again, there's just something about the way he goes about that. I'm telling you, if I would have been sold by my brothers into slavery to the Ishmaelites, I would have been going, why poor me? I would have been asking the wrong why question. Why poor me? And that's not the why that Michael Jr. was talking about, right? Okay? And then he makes it in Potiphar's household and like, we can do this. This is pretty good. And then he ends up in jail, and he could have simply gone, why poor me? But he doesn't get caught up in that why question. And the guards put him in charge of the other prisoners. I think that's what this is depicting here, him being in charge of other prisoners and helping them out and giving some latitude and some leeway for that. And of course, if you know the Joseph story, he interprets dreams in jail. We're running out of time, so I got to move quickly here. He interprets dreams in jail to the cupbearer and the baker, and one of them is his dream is he's going to die immediately, and the other one's going to be restored to the possession or the position that he had. And all Jacob says is, remember me. And years go by, and he's forgotten. Forgotten. And it could be back to that, why poor me? And then finally, Pharaoh has a dream, and nobody can interpret it. And he's brought in, and of course he tells the Pharaoh the dream. He interprets the dream, and it's all about there's going to be 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. And Pharaoh goes, we got to find a wise person to take care of us through the next 14 years. And he looks around and he goes, you, Joseph, you, I like you for that role, right? That's a whole lot of the what of Joseph's story. His coming back to a why has to be when the brothers show back up. And if you can go ahead and go to the next slide, there's this moment that, he goes back and forth, and he's got some Jacob in him. He hides a cup in there, He's trying to get Benjamin, his little brother, there, and there's this crazy back and forth. But there's the moment that the brothers are all there, and he loses it, and he kicks everybody out. And he says in that moment, he says, "You thought you did this to do harm to me, but God did this so that we could all be saved." And he's about what God is doing in his life the whole time. And so that kind of brings me around to, I guess, the why would be, and some of the early questions that I've got. When we're sitting in, if I were to go to a public high school and go, what is your purpose? We might get childbearing. We might be to be a lawyer. We might get to whatever. But when we're sitting in Bible class, we go, my purpose is to do what God wants me to do. All right? That's what the kids at the retreat said. Okay, we know these kind of things, and we're of that. Why we're of faith? Why we wouldn't be sitting in a room like this on a snowy Sunday morning if we weren't of faith and trying to live that out? And so I think a lot of times, instead of it being about what Barry's doing, I'm trying to look for what is my purpose and what is God doing, and how do I fit my life into what He's doing instead of what I'm doing. Now, the what can be, a lot of things. And God uses all of that and needs all of us for that. But that. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Matthew 22, 37 to 38 talks about, you can read that, I'm sure, but talks about the greatest command. If I put that in the context of the greatest command, maybe you could start putting those words together. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul, all your mind. This is the first and greatest command. The second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. What's the biggest thing, the most important thing God's commanded us to do? And that is the idea of loving other people. And so what does God want us to be about? Loving Him and loving others. You can go to the next slide. A long time ago at Winterfest, I think it was Jeff Walling did this, for those of you that know Winterfest and Jeff Walling, but he gave two laws of physics, all right? If I were to throw this remote up in the air, because it's not working, what's going to happen? It's going to come down. Is there any exception to that law? It always comes down, right? So a law of physics cannot be denied. And that was the point that Jeff Walling was making when he taught us this. So law one, love God. We walk in that. It's the truth of our life that's going to come out of that is going to be undeniable, as much as this remote coming back down and hitting me on the head if I throw it straight up. Okay? Law two, love others. It's undeniable. We bring law one, law two into our hearts, into our lives. There's going to be a whole lot of what that may look like. Where, what context, who are we doing this to? There's going to be a whole lot of the different factors of a what in that. But at the end of the day, we know our why to our purpose. And so this is at work, this is at home, and sometimes it's hardest at home. Maybe. That maybe there's more struggles there. Sometimes living in, we have a neighbor or whatever in our neighborhood that we're really struggling with. The video that Kevin played just a couple of weeks ago, to where you had this LGBTQ leader and the church person's worried about this writings of this leader, and they go to the pastor and say, we've got to find some way to overcome all that she's writing. And he says, I think I'll have her over for dinner. That looks like a little bit of L2, doesn't it? Changes the what because we know our why, right? That loving your enemy kind of thing. All right, let's go on. So I really wanted to spend some time in Romans 12 today, and I spent too long when I did this at the retreat on Jacob Joseph, but let me give you this right here. This is Romans 12, 1 and 2. You know this verse. says, therefore I urge you, brothers, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. Did you catch that last part? There's a then, we do something, then we'll know God's will. If I knew God's will as specifically as I could know God's will for my life, that would straighten out my path a whole lot, I would think. I wouldn't make as many wrong turns. I wouldn't get caught up in things that maybe I ought not get caught up in. And how do I do that? How do I know God's will more? Because I really want to know God's will, or at least I really believe I want to know God's will. How do I know that? As this idea of offering your body as a living sacrifice, not being conformed to the pattern of this world, and being transformed by the renewing of our mind. And as we do that, we can understand God's will. Because I want to know the why, quite honestly. I want to know God's why for my life, not just me trying to figure that out. So what's my purpose? Why am I about? What's all of that? And I'm like, oh, then I've got to get into this living sacrifice thing, not conforming to the pattern of this world, working on transformation of my mind. That can be diligent, that can be hard, that can be a lot of things. But God gives us some clues, and this is where I'm really out of time. I'm supposed to wrap up in 3 minutes. So if you were to keep reading Romans 12, verses 3 through 8, he would get into this idea of don't think of yourself too highly, but use the gifts God gave you. He's given you a clue of his why by the what he put in your life. If you can sing, sing for God. If you can preach, preach for God. If you can lead people for God. If you can be a great arguer for people, go be an attorney. I don't know, okay? But the talents that he's given us are a clue to even the why. So the what does matter. The what, he's given us a foundation of that. And Romans 12, 3 through 8 talks about that. And then if you read the rest of Romans chapter 12, he talks about how then this role of love. So we started with love. The greatest thing we can do while we're trying to figure out what's my purpose is try to just start with love God and love others. Use our talents and love other people. And we're going to learn the path of what God's calling us to. Love God, love others, use your talents, and then let's love people. Go to the last slide. Micah 6:8 says this. I asked Jenny, what's a good scripture on purpose? And she said, Micah 6:8. And if I ever learned Micah 6:8, it was not coming to my brain in that moment. She said, act justly, love mercy, walk humbly. And I've tried to keep Micah 6:8 in my forefront. Let's see, that retreat was the third weekend of November, so we're almost for a month. Act justly, love mercy, walk humbly. That's going to keep us closer to the why than anything else we can do. And that right there, actually, I believe describes Joseph's walk once we get past those dreams. He acted justly, he loved mercy, and he walked humbly. And it took him to being the second most powerful person in Egypt. And what I would say to you is God's probably not calling any of us to be the second most powerful person in Egypt, much less the United States of America. But I believe that then God can work through us in his most powerful way and we'll become God's most powerful version of ourselves. And that's something to strive for, right? How can we be God's most powerful person of ourselves? Act justly, love mercy, walk humbly. And that's what I wanted to get to you today on, is that. Micah 6:8. Go buy the t-shirt, it's out there, all right? I don't know if it's a bumper sticker. Go buy the bumper sticker, put it on your mirror. When you're struggling with what's my purpose, what's God's calling me to, you'll never go wrong with starting your day with, this is what I'm going to do today. Well, I may do X, Y, Z, but this is what I'm going to do today. Act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly. Thank you for your attention. I'm sorry that was such a lecture, but it was a sermon at the retreat. So anyway, so have a great day and a wonderful Christmas season.